Let the magic rise.
You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
This is London Calling.
My family and I.
Ooh.
Hey folks, and welcome to Jingly Jangly. Oh yeah. Fake news and imaginary views for the post-truth society. Yes, your antidote to reality with me, Olly Connelly, here in Spain. Big cheers to Mona, Top Show, and all the revolutionaries. And today's show, disclosure. Has advanced alien technology been withheld for corporate profit? Good question. I haven't got a clue. But we've got ex-Navy disclosure witness Dan Willis here to educate me, at least. That wasn't Dan. No, he is kind of a homestead kind of a character in the middle of Oregon. Dan, are you there?
Ollie, thanks for inviting me on the show.
Oh, Dan Willis, I tell you, it's an honor to have you on here. It really is fantastic. This is going to be. I've been looking forward to this because I often have a mate of mine, Piers Garnham, on the show, and he really is a very esoteric head, and he's always talking about Sitchin and all that kind of stuff, and trying to educate me, but I often get lost. But I'm hoping you're going to round the circle tonight and fill me in at least, and maybe a few other folks. God bless you. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's I always learn something when I'm trying to explain it.
Sometimes things sink in like that. I was actually thinking, what else has been going on in the world today or this week? And one enormous thing that's been going on is this whole Comey affair. And I just wonder, does that mean that we're more or less likely to get disclosure? Well, just to spin your whole thing, we'll qualify you in a sec, but to spin your whole thing on this week's events, are we more likely now to have disclosure with, is this draining the swamp, or is it just nonsense?
That's a hard question to answer, but it does seem that the elements that be with the Clinton would be less, but some people believe it would be more because of Clinton's involvement with Lawrence Rockefeller, who was trying to do the Lawrence Rockefeller Initiative. And the Clintons, obviously, when Bill Clinton came into office, he asked his main man there. He wanted to find out two things: one, the truth about UFOs, and who killed JFK, Sarah McClendon, who sponsored the famous White House correspondent who sponsored the National Press Club event that I was one of 21 top secret military witnesses that stated before 22 cameras of the mainstream media that we were willing to testify under oath before a congressional hearing. Bill Clinton said to Sarah regarding, the disclosure of the ET reality, Sarah, there's a secret government within the government, and I don't control it. So whether or not, Trump seems to be a wild card. He's a mixed bag on his, a lot of things he's doing is upsetting people. And but
it's hard to know where he stands, isn't it? It's very hard to know.
Yeah, so
this Comey deal. I mean, Comey, on the one hand, seemed to be anti-Clinton. And on the other hand, he seems to be anti-Trump. But he just seems to be all over the place. And I don't know. I don't really know the ins and outs of it. I know what happened in the election campaign. And, then it was the Russians and all that lot. But I don't know. But in terms of disclosure, okay, maybe we should qualify disclosure first. I suppose maybe I'm jumping the gun, but I'm just wondering: do you think it's more likely with Trump or not? Maybe this is a question I should have asked later on.
I would say it's more likely, but then again, I have
Not very.
I mean, there's witnesses coming out that they still need to be verified. I mean, we have people that are claiming to be, part of secret space programs that have been coming out since, 2000, and some with substantial documentation, like such as William Tompkins. But they're claiming that there's been over close to 6,000 actually. Patents that have been suppressed through a secret system within the national security apparatus within the patent office called Sensitive Application Warning System, that anybody that comes up with a solution for getting off of nuclear, oil, or coal, or anti-gravity, or any kind of over-unity type of technology, they get slapped with, and I've worked with a number of scientists and inventors who receive these national security orders, which basically says your invention has been deemed to be a threat to the national security of the United States, therefore you cannot share it with anybody. So you have thousands of these inventions, and supposedly, I don't have any direct proof, but 1,000 of these patents could be released to the world, which is kind of counteracting, considering, he does the Keystone Pipeline and the coal and the nuclear plants, which we're already witnessing with Fukushima's, the dangers of.
Yep.
These technologies completely replace, and that, in fact, that was one of the main subjects that when we went to Washington, that we said in front of the mainstream media, is that we have these scientists within these black projects. They're called unacknowledged special access projects, where it means that it doesn't matter who you are, head of intelligence or president, you get denied access that it even exists. So,
right.
These,
okay, Dan. Okay. I'm gonna restructure this before. Okay, how did you get involved in this? I know you're ex-Navy. I know that you're at this congressional hearing. Was it a congressional hearing? It was a C-SPAN type of a thing, wasn't it? And basically, you stood up and you said, "Look, there's a hidden space program. There are hidden programs. There's hidden technology that's being withheld." Can you elaborate and put me right? Qualify yourself, please.
Yes. Okay. Back in 1969, I had a high-level, top-secret crypto level 14 extra-sensitive handling security clearance working at the busiest military communication facility on the planet at the time, Naval Communications Station in San Francisco. One of the Navy ships off the coast of Alaska, the crew witnessed coming off of Port Bow a brightly glowing 70-foot diameter disc that was glowing reddish-orange that shot out in front of them and went out into space. The radar operator trapped the blips going over 7,000 miles per hour. Now, my testimony was insignificant. This was a secret classified going to the Chief of Naval Operations in Washington, D.C. message that was authenticated. So, I was a high-speed code operator at the time. I was in charge of the code room. It's an antiquated form of communication, that type of thing.
What was it that you saw then? What was it that you saw or perceived?
Say again, Ollie?
But you for your witness testimony, what was your evidence?
Oh, I contacted the Office of Naval Investigation. Office of O&I, basically, to try to get a copy of the report, but it was destroyed, unfortunately. Unlike the other witnesses who had substantiating documentation, actually, I was. One of the witnesses chickened out. Here we're breaking national security oaths and things, in front of 22 cameras at the mainstream media, National Press Club. So one of them chickened out.
And this is in 2001,
I filled in.
Yeah? This is in 2001, Dan, no?
Yeah, May 9th, 2001, National Press Club, Washington, D.C.
Okay.
the other witnesses were, mine was like the least significant testimony. They're talking about UFOs coming in and shutting down the nukes. 57 different species have already been categorized in retrieval operations. A base on the other side of the moon. NASA airbrushing the UFOs out before they release it to the public. When we had the head of the FAA investigations,
nothing
controversial.
proof. Nothing controversial.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, it's like everything, and talking about presidents and CIA directors being denied access, and in fact, that's how the whole thing came about. If you want to go back to the history of it, what happened was.
Well, no, we will. We'll come on to the history.
Okay,
we'll come on to the history. But, okay, so you were in code. This is 1969. It's truth. But Dan, I had no idea you were so old. You look so youthful. And I that's the year I was born. You were working in San Francisco at this top-notch HQ in intelligence, and this spaceship basically comes out of the Pacific and heads straight up into the hemisphere and beyond and into space. That's basically that's not purely what this hearing was about, is it, or was it? That event?
Oh, not at all. No, the Disclosure Project was basically wanting all these witnesses have explosive testimony. Mine was just one small fragment of the whole picture.
Okay.
In fact, since the CIA director was denied access back in '93, trying to look into it because Clinton wanted to find out about it. Dr. Greer was brought into this meeting, and the CIA director is, I know the subject's real, and trying to figure out why the hell I can't gain access to it. Because what happened was our legal constitutional government back during the Eisenhower era basically got cut out of the loop completely. And so you have these secret operations using our national security apparatus that has denied presidents and CIA directors and intelligence people any access to this stuff. It's completely isolated our legal constitutional government.
So who does have access to this very top level information?
Well, you have to be part of it's very highly compartmentalized. You have to have a need to know. You have to be part of whatever project. It's very, secrets are kept through compartmentalization, where one person doesn't know what the other person's doing. And they have these projects that, you're assigned to a particular project, but you don't know what the other projects are. You don't even know what. You could be even part of a project that you don't even know what this whole thing's about, So
okay, but in this particular case, there must be some people that do know what the deal is. You're basically talking about alien disclosure, yeah. So presumably there are some people that are in communication with the aliens, if this is correct, or else that somehow has intercepted their technology and is able to reverse engineer it. Maybe they're not in communication.
I don't know who these people are directly, but I know who they are not. But there's some obvious people that would have a need to know. For example, Jimmy Carter, had a UFO experience, or past president, and
really?
At the time, CIA director George H.W. Bush had access and control of this information and denied the president of the United States access to this information. And we had Daniel Sheehan, one of the 21 witnesses that were in support of this at the press club, testifying to that fact. So, and the fact that we've had technologies for over 60 years that could make nuclear oil and coal completely obsolete and replace it. But there's big interest in that, and beside corporate profits, which is obvious, there's geopolitical control, because you allow this technology. It means the third world countries can be brought up to our standard in no time.
Hey Dan, we lost you there. Okay, so you were in the Navy for a while, and I know you've been researching this in some detail for about 10 years. Is that right? Well, about 20 years, I suppose.
Well, I've been ever since it seeded in my mind, when I got this, official secret report, I thought, what could this be? I love science fiction and stuff, but, this was real. So,
Yep.
over the years since 1969, which is quite a long time ago, I've had a few experiences. I've seen them fly 100 feet over my head. I don't know if they were ours or theirs, but, it was quite real. And it wasn't until 2000 that his girlfriend wanted to go to this UFO conference. Dr. Greer was speaking, and I really didn't want to go. It was just seemed like a kind of a Looney Tunes, aliens and selling stuff and whatever, But I decided to go, and I heard what he was planning going to Washington, and then we kind of crashed the cocktail party. And I'm standing there holding an hors d'oeuvre tray, right? And Dr. Greer comes by. He says, "Oh, could I try one of those?" And I said, "Oh, by the way, I used to have a top secret clearance in the Navy, and I blah blah blah, And he said, "Oh, we'll go see Linda over here, and we'll film you in the morning." So I was the 100th filmed videotaped witness to go on record. And then what happened was, as I said, one of the witnesses decided to change their mind. So, I said, well, if it's appropriate, I'll be honored to help support, what you're doing. And so I, on my own dime, I flew and over there, and then we, after we did the National Press Club, we gathered into group, met with about 24 senators and congressmen on Capitol Hill. We brought a 500-page briefing document and 4 hours of executive briefing video, which was boiled down to hundreds of hours, but these guys don't have time to read or watch any of this stuff. And you know what? Most of the congressmen and senators and the president and vice president, everybody's pretty much indoctrinated how to respond to this issue. In fact, I put together an online fax, and we traveled around the country since Bush administration, what a surprise, denied the congressional hearing we were seeking. And about 30,000 faxes went into all our congressional representatives. In fact, I even put a database in for the UK and, other countries all over the world. People could, send their representatives and say, hey, what's up with this? It's like you've got admirals, generals, astronauts. You've got over 500 witnesses. If you go to court with 5 witnesses, you kind of have sort of a slam dunk case, right? They're willing to testify under oath. But here we have 500 witnesses. But the mainstream media, who's been controlled ever since Operation Mockingbird in the 1950s, has completely sanitized the event, made it sound like these people wanted to have a congressional hearing based on the reality of UFOs, which, doesn't, the person sitting back watching the news, it doesn't really alert them, as to the critical issues that were actually being disclosed.
What are the biggest disclosures that were made at those hearings, in your mind?
In my mind, the biggest disclosures that were made is that our legal constitutional government has been essentially, controlled by this unacknowledged group that has taken control and has denied our legal representatives, our presidents and CIA directors, access to this whole thing. Which originated, back when Eisenhower needed plausible deniability and had Nelson Rockefeller restructure the MJ-12 and CIA operations, and then he was completely denied access after that. He couldn't even. They moved all the operations from Wright-Patterson, where they were taking the discs and things to reverse engineer, over to the Area 51 S4 facility, and he even threatened.
Well, I'll ask you. Go on. Sorry, carry on. Yep.
He threatened to invade Area 51 with the Army because they were denying him access, and then they finally agreed to CIA, which one of them came out and testified to his experience of going over there and actually met with an extraterrestrial and saw the craft that there was different types of craft. There was the German Nazi SS craft. There was from the Viral Society.
This is Area 51.
Yeah,
This is the whole Roswell
S4,
thing.
S4 actually. It was about 13 miles south of Area 51.
Okay, so you're not talking about what was it, 1951, the Roswell thing. But this is a base down the road.
Yeah, this happened. This was around 1955, 1954 in that area. Is
Right,
when we basically lost control, and so every president, and then
right. When you
Eisenhower
say lost
tried to
control,
warn.
you mean you lost control of suppressing the information. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, this was the reason why Eisenhower warned, beware of the unwarranted influences within the industrial military complex, and that only an alert and knowledgeable citizenry is why we're doing these shows, Olly, can protect our future liberties and freedoms, and he shared with Kennedy, who was well aware of this issue with his background, Office of Naval Intelligence, and he warned the public about, the dangers of the secrecy of this whole situation. And, he tried to, unlike Forrestal before him, who was, suicided when he wanted to release this information to the public as, one of the major MJ12 members. James Forrestal.
Right. I don't know who that was.
Yeah, back in 1949, about a month after I was born,
right. Okay.
He was thrown out of the hospital window because he wanted to release the information to the public, but they were vehement. The MJ12 members were vehemently opposed. And then Alan
MJ12.
Dulles.
Hold on, what's that?
Sorry, I have a tendency to, one thought leads to another on this whole thing, and it's quite.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, there's such a big spider's web here. It's kind of hard to know which is the best direction to address it, and then how to be. I'll tell you, it's a big. But there have been some enormous names. I mean, for example, Paul Hellyer, what was a Canadian defense minister in the late 60s. He's another one who has basically said, look, it's amazing the stuff that's been covered up. So it's people coming from politics, like, as you say, Ike, warning us about the military-industrial complex. JFK didn't he? He warned us. And then about a week or 2 weeks later, he was dead. Was telling us about all sorts of mysterious stuff going on and stuff that he wanted to change and things like that. Something I wanted to ask you. Another curious thing, I mentioned that Comey thing. I wonder what difference that'll make. Probably none. But something else that's coming up under Trump's remit is that JFK, some of the files are due to be released now, aren't they? Under the however many years rule, I think in September. Might we learn something more about JFK? Because JFK actually, a lot of people reckon, is it not correct, Dan, to say that JFK's death had a lot to do with disclosure?
Well, probably the document that got exposed regarding JFK's assassination, you mean?
Yeah.
The one document that's revealing.
In terms of what did he know? Was that another reason, or the reason that he was, he was
murdered because the reason he was murdered was because he was going to release the secrets. You remember the Watergate with Nixon,
Yeah.
The attorney that was prosecuting for that interviewed E. Howard Hunt, which was the CIA operative involved in that. And just before he went to prison, he had an interview with him, and he asked, why was JFK murdered? And he said, because he was going to release the secrets, to the Soviet Union, and the major secret. And he said, what was that? And he said, quote, the alien presence, unquote. So what Kennedy was attempting to do was, beside get us off of the Federal Reserve, stop the Vietnam War, so I wouldn't have to go there in 1970, and to open cooperation with the Soviet Union on the outer space matters, And he contacted Alan Dulles, who was a CIA director, very instrumental into the Nazi infiltration, by the way.
Got an airport named after him now. Denver, no?
Yeah, General Reinhard Gehlen, working with them and bringing them all in. But basically, he wanted to get the files, and in the leaked document that was snatched out of the counterintelligence files of James Jesus Angleton, which was the protege of Alan Dulles, they were trying to burn and destroy all this evidence, but this one agent pulled this one document out, and the document said that Lancer, which is a code word for JFK, is looking into our activities, and this we must not allow. That basically they had a directive called Project Environment that was an assassination directive, that if they can no longer get cooperation with Washington, then it should be an assassination, basically, they said. And so that's what happened with JFK.
Yeah, I tell you, it makes you wonder. It does make you wonder. It's hard to know for sure. I mean, do you feel that that's absolutely the explanation so far as JFK is concerned?
When you look at all the evidence and you look at all the supporting documentation and you look at the witness testimonies, it's kind of interesting. In 1967, the CIA came out with a dispatch to, because what was happening was people were questioning the lone gunman theory, right? With JFK's assassination. And it's kind of interesting also that...
so they should. It's ridiculous.
That, JFK warned about the dangers of secret societies, right?
Yeah,
and so the Warren Commission, Justice Earl Warren, was a 33rd degree Freemason. LBJ, who they replaced him, was a 33rd degree Freemason. Alan Dulles, who was involved in the commission, was a 33rd degree Freemason. Gerald Ford,
in charge of that, wasn't he? I mean, I know it was the Warren Commission, but wasn't Dulles the kind of the political man that was,
He was fired by JFK because of his activities he was doing. And Gerald Ford, a 33rd degree Freemason. And when you look at what a 33rd degree Freemason is, you cannot do anything within the Masonic order to reach the 33rd degree on your own. It's an honorary. You have to be selected to be that. And the way the order works, it's kind of like a military chain of command. The higher levels give orders to the lower levels. And so... you have all these 33rd degree Freemasons, right? Judging that, oh yeah, it's a lone gunman. And then they come out with this dispatch I mentioned earlier that came out with, to use the term conspiracy theorists, in order to discredit people who were countering the official narrative on what happened with JFK, and saying things that, oh, they have financial interests, they have like these half-baked theories, they have all these different things to discredit people. So and Lee Harvey Oswald, in the document itself, it says, and they say that Lee Harvey Oswald had been trained by the CIA or worked for the CIA, which is a lie. But actually, there's documents that showed that Lee Harvey Oswald did work for the CIA and was trained by Office of Naval Intelligence. So, they even lie within their own documents. And even Alan Dulles said it's company policy, the CIA, to lie to protect company secrets. He told the rest of the members. So... there's a whole lot of my mother used to have this whole Argentine
There's a lot of smoke.
saying. Yeah, exactly. There was a lot of smoke. There's a lot of fire.
Oh my word! I tell you, it's incredible. Absolutely incredible. Okay. Let's have a look at a modern day example of something that adds more smoke to me. And that's this new American battleship that is propelled purely on seawater, powered purely from seawater. It seems to me that if they can do that with I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of tons that thing weighs, but if they can basically get that thing to run on seawater, they can probably do it with a car. I mean,
Of course they can.
Is that not a good example of hidden technology in action? And why aren't people talking about it? I mean, to me, that's a flashing neon light.
Yeah, this broadcast engineer who was John Carish, I think his name. I can't remember exact name, but he was able to show how you could actually. The scientists were able to prove it. You can actually burn salt water, and it creates this incredible amount of energy. He was basically bought, and the thing was shelved, like they usually do. I had a lot of experience.
It's like one of those patents you were talking about.
Yeah, I had a lot of experience in the suppressed energy situation, and the team I was working with Professor Leuter, we set up a corporation. I flew around the planet meeting with scientists and inventors. One of the inventors, was Stan Meyer, who was able to run his car on water and proved it. In fact, he had the patents. The day after he cut a deal with the Pentagon, he was poisoned and murdered. So. What happened? We were trying to gather the technology from that, and so we bid on the technology that he had. He was in the Navy and he had radar background, so he understood some of the physics of in order to break the hydrogen away from the water molecule to be able to use the hydrogen fuel to run a car. And so we bidded on this technology. But another group outbid us, and they got the technology. But you know what? Everybody in that group has been murdered.
Blimey.
So, they keep, water technology is definitely real. We can run our cars on water if they allow the technology out with a simple retrofit. You can replace the billions and billions of automobiles and trucks and everything to run on water, which would be a good transitional technology. It's an internal combustion engine, face it. It's like got a million moving parts and the thing self-destructs after a while. They have the technology that can be like a little box that you can run your entire house off or your business, or you could put it into an electric car. They even have anti-gravity technology. Anti-gravity was discovered back in October of 1954 in the United States.
What is anti-gravity? What is it? I mean, presumably it's the opposite of gravity, but when you talk about anti-gravity technology, what do you mean? You're not pulled back by gravity?
Well, you don't need rocket fuel in order to leave the gravitational pull of the Earth, as NASA has.
Oh, that's going to help. Yep.
Anti-gravity, was developed a long time ago.
It basically helps for propulsion.
Yeah, primarily they use mercury, counter-rotational type plasmic fields that are energized, that creates a collapse of mass, and so that you lose the gravitational pull of the Earth, and you can go out into space.
Okay, what other sort of technologies? I mean, Velcro. I mean, presumably there have been. I'm just thinking, I know that's a bit flippant, but is it not the case that we have seen some remarkable technologies, such as graphene, for example, where now they reckon they can filter salt water so that you just get pure water, sweet water. The salt taken out, which is a salination device, an anti-salination or desalination device.
That's right.
Are there not things like this, for example? That what else? What else have they come up with? Lots of military stuff, that have maybe then filters through to, Joe Public.
Well, what's in the black projects? Remember the Podesta emails that came out that were revealed. Yep. One of our witnesses who's passed on, Dr. Edgar Mitchell, the astronaut, he was in communication with Podesta talking about releasing the 0-point energy. That's what they call it. It's like you can pull energy from the vacuum of space, and talking about the Vatican aware of the ETI experience, existence. Well,
they've admitted there are folks, big names that are admitting that you can pull energy essentially out of the ether. Is that
Well,
what you're saying?
this was leaked, through
One
WikiLeaks.
of the
It
Podesta emails.
wasn't something that was meant to be public, but it came out.
Right.
Yeah. But I can tell you that
That would
within
be
the
a lot
black
easier to
projects,
talk
they have free energy, they have anti-gravity. We could desalinate the oceans. We even have classified technology that can remediate radiation in the ocean, like we're getting, from Fukushima.
Really?
I mean, there's technologies
How do
that
you
seem
remediate
science
radiation?
fiction.
Incredible. How do you remediate radiation? I know there's a bit of a tangent there, but obviously that's a big one. What happened in Fukushima is a terrible thing. I mean, is there any way we could somehow set the clock back on that?
I don't have the answer to that. I do know that I've been told that they have these classified technologies that they're not releasing that can do that, but I don't have any more information than that. But I've seen free energy devices work. I'm familiar with situations where I've met with many scientists and inventors that a member of our team was murdered. This one Dutch inventor had a little device about the size of a shoebox, producing about 240 watts of power. He was going to go to Europe to patent it, and he was found dead, slumped over a steering wheel in the airport parking lot. I've been working with the Bedinis up in Idaho for many years. They had, based on Tesla's radiant energy technology. He wasn't able to deliver, but this recently he just passed away, and his brother, both within 4 hours of each other, kind of suspiciously. I mean, there's a lot of there's a
lot of
sad.
examples. It's similar with climate science, isn't it? I mean, I've certainly read in the alternative news websites and stuff like that, because again, one of the things is this stuff is rarely reported on mainstream. And if it is, it's ridiculed or what have you. And as you've said, the mainstream is controlled by not only the news media, but Hollywood too, huh? I mean, MK Ultra, for example, you mentioned Operation Mockingbird. We have been, there is kind of like a perfect structure here. People say, how on earth, people say to me, people that, if you like, are less aware, I'm not sure how aware I am, but I'm certainly curious. A lot of people, though, that are, if you like, have researched very little, would say to me, this pyramid structure that you talk about, how on earth can that work? And it's actually very logical, because any company, any organization is run in a pyramid structure, and it's just this global one. It's just a bit bigger. But you as you've suggested, it's capstoned by these kind of 33rd degree Masonic types, and then it has its various different divisions beneath, such as the media, and it's not just the news media, is it? It actually permeates even, and that too, into Hollywood, and so the people, they think, come on, that's something you saw in Hollywood, sort of thing. I mean, it's a very sophisticated, system that they've got.
Well, this is my main interest, Olly, actually tapping on, because I was a broadcast engineer, and I was ABC newsman, so when we went to Washington, the whole place was packed, 22 cameras of mainstream media, all the main people were there, UPI, AP, Reuters, all those guys. And I was wondering, how could all... I thought I was going to be naively, I thought I was going to be part of a world-changing event. How could all the things that we're disclosing not just like have ripples and across the entire planet? I've seen my testimony in several different languages, but what happened was, they effectively sanitized it, and CBS came and did an interview with me after I noticed what they did with how CNN did it. I said, look, I'm not willing to do this testimony. I mean, this interview rather, unless I can say, like a little short 5-second statement that we have the scientists within these black projects that can prove we have a solution to get off of nuclear, oil, and coal with a non-polluting energy, She promised up and down, right? And then interviewed me for about 45 minutes and everything, and did the exact cookie cutter of what CNN did, where the only thing I say is, we've reached a critical point where the truth needs to be revealed to the people. Well, the truth never got out. They cut it out. And she was in tears. She says, I know I promised, but, the higher executives, read CIA, made me cut that part out. And we know that, since, Operation Mockingbird back in 1950, which was set up by Alan Dulles, had about 400 journalists. Today they have journalists that are what's called non-official covers. You had one German journalist that was doing it for 25 years. He said he was given information by the CIA, but he was trained how to lie and how to make it look like it's coming from independent sources. But on Gaddafi, he was giving a report, and the CIA gives him, and it's called a non-official cover. So if he's ever caught, then the CIA disavows any knowledge of him whatsoever. You have Amber Lynn of CNN that was saying that,
Amber Lyon, yeah.
Amber Lyon, yes, you're right. Thank you. Saying that, we're doing infomercials for dictators, that they're paying for this information. This is journalism, So, right. We had like 50 corporations, I think, 1984.
Fake news, very fake.
And now we have 5 corporations controlling everything we see and hear. And you've got the CIA with the Tavistock Institute and all these billions of dollars of think tanks going together, engineering our consent to manage our perception on the mainstream media, which is, to fit the agenda. So, people are becoming more awake of it. It's like you don't want to think that nice man on the evening news, he's reading a teleprompter, it's like, and the information that's being fed to him is being carefully. One of the witnesses, Daniel Sheehan, the famous Washington attorney, had a document of 42 CIA NSA operatives at the highest position of mainstream media that whose purpose is to sanitize and control this issue from the public. So, our planet's been hijacked, Olly, by this group. And what the Nazis even had a plan before the end of the war. A lot of them escaped and infiltrated in paperclip, NASA, and through the CIA and whatnot. And they had a
Operation
plan called
Paperclip.
Old Weltanschauungskrieg, which translates to worldview warfare. They wanted to come in and control the education.
Worldview warfare. So that is the mainstream media, fake stream.
Well, what they did, we ended the war in May of 1945. In 1946, the Rockefeller Foundation, tied in with the banking elite and the Nazi whole thing, is they rewrote the official history of what happened at the end of World War II. So future generations will be reading history books and not put the things together, connect the dots. And then Alan Dulles in 1950, Operation Mockingbird, they took control of our media. And then in 1951, it was Operation Dove, or Project Dove, rather, where the first movie was The Day the Earth Stood Still, but the CIA has their liaisons within Hollywood, all the evil alien movies, you've seen, over the years. They basically did it. They did worldview warfare on us. And the whole idea was they think in long term, not just like, within 1 or 2 years. They think in generations, generation after generation being falsely indoctrinated so that we don't, the generations of the day have no idea of what
I'm going to ask you about the history for anybody that's wondering. And I imagine a lot of the folks listening do know quite a bit about this too. But I'm going to ask you about that history in the second hour, and we'll go into that a little bit because that in itself is quite fascinating. I wanted to ask you now. You touched on the Nazis and maybe what they were doing with alien technology, or that has been purported, for example. I wanted to ask you about what's going on in Antarctica, because there seems to be a lot of interest now on possible hidden technology in Antarctica. Possibly it's just, it was a continent that, I don't know, they found ruins or what have you there under the ice on the landmass, or something else. And there have been some very interesting names that have gone down there. I think it was in the run up to the, was it Biden that went there just before the election? Very curious timing. Just before the changing of the guard or something like that.
Yeah, John Kerry.
Well, Kerry. It was Kerry, wasn't it? What are you hearing about Antarctica?
Well, it is rather odd that Buzz Aldrin, John Kerry, the head of the Russian church, you have all these people, they're going down there for climate change. Or I don't think so,
The canapes.
I don't have any direct information other than there's a lot of evidence that the Nazis basically set up a base under there. There's tons of evidence of that, and
what is that evidence? Is it submarines going to and fro and stuff like that they managed to intercept their movements and stuff like? They know that the Germans were messing around down there during the war. Is there any more evidence than that?
Well, yeah, back I think it was 1938, around there, they started the expeditions down there, surveying it and stuff, and that what the submarines found is that they were studying these ancient maps, which showed that there was underneath the ice these maps that were based on ancient maps. The Respires map, I'm going to pronounce it correctly, but it was like in 1513, and it shows Antarctica without ice, and it shows how it has canals going. I mean, a huge opening that submarines could go into, and there was documents discovered where the U-boat commanders were given instructions how to enter it by a certain latitude, longitude, and how to navigate it on. And it
didn't do much good, did it?
And then you have to wonder, Admiral Byrd, he got sent down there with a full military armada and came back, defeated, by flying discs coming out of the water. And
really,
and it was printed in a Chilean newspaper, a little brief excerpt, and there was a Russian intelligence report that actually.
When did that happen, Dan? I didn't know anything about that story. Admiral Byrd.
Oh yeah, it was December 1946, and then they were set up for a long time to be down there, but they came back rather quickly. There was
a bunch of ships.
Huge military armada, aircraft carrier, all these planes. They had submarines, destroyer escorts. They had huge. It was a huge operation being sent down there under the command of James Forrestal over Admiral Byrd to go down there.
Right.
According to Russian intelligence reports, which had two of the seamen, a Navy radio man, such as myself, and a pilot who was talking about the discs that were coming out of the ocean, and it had like some type of plasma ray cannons. Anyway, it was a mess. They took out a lot of planes, and it was they had to retreat. And so what happened was basically the Nazis infiltrated into our government and started taking over positions and making agreements, and there's a whole lot of information that's coming out now, such as William Tompkins, who I've been studying and working with Dr. Michael Salla, looking at some of the Freedom of Information documents on his involvement. My father actually worked for 20 years at the base where he was working with these 29 embedded Navy spies that were working within the Nazi secret space program that they were, doing over there, and that were gathering intelligence and trying. See, the Nazis had anti-gravity back in the 30s, so they had like a 2-decade jump on us. We were trying to catch up with them.
You think that this alien technology basically came out of Nazi Germany somehow, maybe as a result, for example, of Hitler's interest of the occult, and that then off the back of the Second World War, as is well documented, that Nazi expertise was imported into the United States under Operation Paperclip, and that fed, for example, the creation of the CIA and the rocket program, i.e., NASA. Is that correct? Is that what you're saying? Before that, the US had no understanding or no contact with no reference at all to alien technology until then.
Well, actually, it goes back a little further than that.
Right.
Remember, there was the Battle of L.A. where there was like you had all this anti-aircraft. I mean, thousands of rounds of anti-aircraft. There was like 5 discs that were going over L.A. 2 of them were shot down.
I didn't know that. No, I've never heard of this. Sorry, the Battle of L.A. with a bunch of spacecraft
Los
over
Angeles, California.
Right.
1942.
Okay. I didn't know this.
Happened, no. I didn't know a lot of this either. It wasn't Ollie. It wasn't until just a brief background. I've been trying to catch up on all this stuff and researching it. It wasn't until
I didn't even know that Jean-Claude Juncker had been setting up tax havens for a living before he was the president of the EU. I didn't even know that, let alone this stuff. This stuff doesn't get printed. Sorry.
So anyway, back to Battle of L.A. Anyway, 2 discs were shot down. The Army Air Force, before it turned into the United States Air Force in 1947, the same exact time the CIA was created, and the same exact time the MJ12 group was created.
That's got nothing to do with Michael Jackson. What is MJ12? What does it stand for?
Originally, it was Majority 12, but then it got into Majestic 12. So somehow the name got
ultra secret group. Is that it?
Yeah. What it was is under the advice of General Twining to President Truman to have a secret government within a government that could operate completely isolated, because there was an authenticated top secret document that came out in I think it was 1951. I had to check on that, but in that area, that said that yes, flying saucers are real, and the classification is way higher than the hydrogen bomb. So it had to be super, super secret. You know how secret the Manhattan Project was. This was more secret than that. And so you had to have this group that was made up of civilian scientists, military generals and admirals, and which Admiral Roskin Hillicotter was MJ1, of the 12 members. That's why they call it MJ12. There was 12 members. He was concerned at that time about he says we should have open congressional hearings on this matter. I think he was well aware of the Nazi infiltration and the abuse of the secrecy that was established by the National Security Act of 1947 that Truman signed into place, which gave the CIA the ability to operate completely without congressional oversight. And he was warning the public about the dangers of secrecy, not about the dangers of UFOs or anything, but the dangers of the secrecy associated with. And he was right. They utilized that secrecy, our own national security, basically against us. But anyway, back to the story.
Hold on, Dan, just a sec. I'll tell you, great. I really appreciate it. We've got Dan Willis on here talking about disclosure on Revolution Radio, Jingly Jangly. We got a break coming up, and we're going to be here for the next hour. I'm going to be asking Dan about some of the history behind how this cover-up has been perpetrated, and I don't know, probably a bit about how are we going to learn from this and try and drum up some awareness and off the back of that use some of this technology. I mean, it's truth. We need to. How on earth are we going to run our cars on salt water? Hey, Dan? I mean, Never mind the bloody Navy. I want to get my car running on salt water. Anyway, yeah. I think we've got a break coming up. Thanks very much, Dan. Really, really great to have you on the show. And we'll be back in a couple of minutes. I always cock this up, yeah. I always cock up the timing coming up into the top bumper. Yes, hello. Yes, indeed. You're welcome. You're listening to Jingly Jangly. Olly Connelly here with Dan Willis, my special guest, talking about disclosure with us tonight. And Dan, I thought of a really, really good question during that break because I thought I've got to try and at least appear intelligent, but I've lost it again. We were talking. We were talking about we're talking about disclosure and the history of disclosure. Is it not fair to say now that people talk about UFOs more in, if you like, common parlance? They talk about it down the pub, down the bar. It's not something that is. You're not just a conspiracy theorist. You're not just a whack job if you talk about UFOs anymore. No.
Well, there's because of the back before the internet, there was a lot of information that wasn't publicly accessible to a lot of people. And as
That's right.
people started to look at research, look at documents, what I use is my rock solid foundation, because people can make up anything, pull it out of what.
Yep. Fake news.
And what you have to have a foundation because there is a definite war going on to manage your perception on the internet, on the mainstream media, and your education system. There's a definite war going on to manage your perception and put disinformation out there to have people not connect the information together. But what I base
and they're doing well, because I don't know about you, but I'm confused.
Well, you can imagine billions of dollars. In fact, Obama with the NDAA made it legal to use disinformation against the American public.
Amazing.
So it's even legal. It's like amazing the stuff they can make legal. Anyway, and what I use as my rock solid foundation is I'm only one witness. Back when the CIA director was denied access, that we talked about, James Woolsey, back in '93, Dr. Greer started the Witness Archival Project to bring hundreds of witnesses. So I'm only one of 500 witnesses, which include admirals, generals, astronauts, many with official collaborating documentation that backed it up. Now, if all these witnesses, many with nothing to gain, some had their reputation, their jobs, their lives even threatened, is making all this up, that would be even more bizarre. And then you have all the authenticated documents that look through history of what substantiates these witness testimonies. So that's what I use as my foundation, and I branch out from there to see what it's hard.
So for you, it's a process of elimination. Using logic really as to who would and wouldn't stand to gain from telling a story, be it true or false. And as you rightly say, I would have thought, military top brass kind of characters, ex-cabinet ministers, in G7 countries, stuff like that. These kind of folks, they're not likely to be lying, are they?
Yeah, and I wouldn't suggest anybody believe anything we're saying on this show. Everybody needs to do their own research and find out for themselves. What I like to look at, because the situation is so highly compartmentalized, and that's a great way to keep things secret. And because there's so much disinformation out there, all you can do is, people who say, oh, I have all the answers, I know it all, I know exactly what this is, I don't really fully trust those kind of people,
I agree.
The thing is, all you can do is look for indicators, is what I call them. You look for indicators, and if you get enough of these indicators, so you start getting documents, you start getting witnesses, and they start indicating something happening, and it makes logical reasoning sense that something like that would happen, like having a secret space program, especially if they'd discovered anti-gravity, back in the 50s. What that does is it gives a higher probability that something's true. So when you look at all these indicators, what happened, Olly, was I got myself when I went to Washington, I was naive about a lot of this stuff. And it wasn't until a media company out of Hollywood, because I used to be an ABC newsman and a disclosure witness. So they wanted me to write an article, on media control regards to the UFO issue. So I ended up, it's become my online notepad, so to speak. And I had to put everything in chronological order. And the listeners can view this if they wish.
Yeah, it's great.
Online.
I was looking earlier. Yeah, give us the link. Yeah.
At www.thewebmatrix.net, not .com, but .net. If you go there, what I did was I put together, in order to understand things, it seems like you have to look at what the source of how things started to get to where they are today. And so I started to research back just to the 20th century, and looking at the chronological order of all the indicators up to present day. And, as I started to research for myself, it's like one, oh my God, after another. It's like, God, this tops any imagination of a science fiction story that you can possibly imagine. I mean, it's incredibly fascinating, although it's disturbing. It's
fascinating. The events you pull out. Maybe this is really what I wanted to concentrate on in this hour as much as we can. Would you say it kind of does date back? I mean, we cannot be sure, I guess, but if you were to turn this into a movie, I could kind of imagine the opening scene be,
what an incredible movie script.
Well, yeah, but maybe there would be a big, a big throwback to the past, but it would maybe open up with a shot of Zachariah Sitchin or something in present day Iraq and in an ancient Sumerian library or something, poring over a tablet. I mean, would you say that he was the guy that began to uncover perhaps what is more of the truth of our ancient history?
Well, it's hard to say, like Zachariah Sitchin and his interpretations of the ancient Sumerian script. It is kind of interesting, though, that this whole space program, secret space program, started with Maria Orsic doing mediumship and receiving ancient Sumerian script that she gave to Professor Schumann at the University of Munich, that saw there was viable physics for making a flying disc that could warp time around it, is what they said. Like
they put the history down. They put the science down on the tablets.
Say again, Olly?
You're saying the Sumerians basically put down the science of that on a tablet, that was 6,000 years old or something.
Well, no, she was doing channeling, like mediumship,
right?
And she was writing this down, and he's just writing this stuff down, right? And then they had to have people interpret it, and then people who were scholars in ancient Sumerian script, and when they wrote it down and translated it into German, no doubt, then they looked at it and saw, wow, this is the plans to make a flying saucer, basically, and they were able to. They were actually it was like, I think it was like 1934.
Right. Okay. Blimey. Why did they lose the war then? If they had, that rocket science, basically.
Well, what happened was Roosevelt at the time You know, I got to stop saying, you know, I do that too many times when I'm speaking. You know, I just assume everybody knows this stuff, right? You know, what happened was the industrial might of the United States. We can make about, you know, 10 airplanes to every one that Germany can make. We had, you know, 10 tanks to every tank, you know. We have the industrial might. What happened when, you know, I got to stop that. Okay. In May of 1945, I've been called out on that from a friend of mine who said, you got to stop saying, you know, so many times.
Tony Blair. Awful.
What happened was James Forrestal, you know, when the during the Potsdam Conference, where Churchill, Stalin, and Roosevelt were all deciding on how to punish Germany after the war, James Forrestal went over there with John F. Kennedy as part of his staff, and they were looking at the advanced technologies that were way ahead of what we had. And so what happened was they didn't quite do it fast enough. And so, but they were able to continue their operations. One of the witnesses, Colonel Wendell Stevens, saw documents that said they had 9 disc factories, and you know, throughout Germany. One was destroyed. The other 8 were relocated to Antarctica. One in the Amazon, another one up in Norway, and they continued building their operations down there. And from what the witnesses are saying, that a reptilian race assisted them by providing a craft that they could develop. And so that's no doubt what happened when Admiral Byrd went down there in Operation High Jump in 1947 that were defeated. So if we would have, if they had a little bit more time, they would have won the war. But no need to win the war when you've completely infiltrated and taken over from the inside. So the Nazis were thinking more in terms of qualitative rather than quantitative victory. In other words, how to work smart, not hard. So they knew they couldn't.
Well, they did pretty well with that.
They couldn't.
You could argue.
You couldn't beat the United States for our industrial might that we have. But it looks like, according to indications, that in 1955 that they collaborated with them, and so now it's like. But the Navy, according to William Tompkins, had its own operation going separately.
Sorry, Dan. Sorry, I just had to say that is absolutely astonishing, isn't it? I mean, the whole thing that happened with Operation Paperclip. I guess it's easy to gloss over it when you know a bit about it, but actually, it is the most incredible, remarkable story when you consider the kind of history that the sheltered history that we were taught, that we were brought up on about, you know, what how terrible that, and then it turns out that we effectively were collaborators, and the war was backed on both sides by the same bankers, and I mean it just beggars belief, and then you have to ask all sorts of other questions about anyway, but yeah, okay, sure. So the Nazis really brought this to our attention, but who were these aliens that maybe gave us these secrets in the first place? Was it as recently as last century, or was it a lot further back than that, and we rediscovered it, or what would you say?
It looks like back in the 1933, the Nazis entered into an agreement, like we did back in 1954-55, with an extraterrestrial race that's alliance. You know, I'm a little hesitant to speak on some of this because this is like more secondhand information from these whistleblowers that are coming out, like such as William Tompkins, that is testifying, saying this. You know, what's interesting is Tompkins has gotten approval from high-level Navy admirals to say, you know, get it out there, tell it all, tell the whole story, and you know, it keeps its own best secrecy because of the way we have been generationally falsely indoctrinated, that when we hear stories like this, it sounds like some bizarre science fiction movie that it's hard to wrap your head around because it just sounds too far-fetched.
Fantastic.
And because of its very nature, it keeps its own best secrecy.
Yeah, it does. And Hollywood does play a hell of a role with that as well, huh? It's so clever. I know I mentioned that in the last hour. It's just to me, I can so understand why people would just, you know what, this is just a lot of hoo-ha. Or
right.
yeah, maybe there's a bunch of UFOs flying around, but that doesn't mean that we've got hidden technology or what have you. But
right, until they research and then they start going, oh my God. You know. Yeah.
Well, what has happened with the political, I mean the official disclosure movement? Because I've noted that in the UK, at least, I'm not sure about in the US, but in the UK there was a push for disclosure. That
right.
there were the Ministry of Defense were releasing a load of records that had, for example, airlines talking about UFO encounters, loads of them, loads, hundreds of them, and
Sure.
then suddenly they stopped. They decided for some reason they stopped. They closed the archives. Not that they, withheld what they'd already let out, but that they were not, releasing any more. What is going on with disclosure? What sort of a game is going on, if any? Maybe I'm reading too much into it. I don't know.
No, you're spot on. In the United States, the same thing happened. There was like a window of where the Freedom of Information Act allowed, in fact, I even contacted the CIA, and I still have a huge stack of documents that substantiate the event that happened. In fact, I made a CD about it, but the thing is that then the whole thing closed up. And so it's almost like
that was only a couple of years
windows.
ago, wasn't it? That's only a couple of years ago that they've got coy again. No?
Well, no, this was back. I can't remember the exact time, but I think it was sometime when when George Bush Sr. became CIA director, sometime in that time frame. I'm not exactly positive, but yeah, the window opened up, and then it just shut down, and you couldn't get anything. In fact, his son, George W. Bush, wrote an executive order to make it secret for all the files that used to be publicly accessible about presidents.
Really?
Be secret, going all the way back to when his daddy was the CIA director with Reagan.
Putting the lid back on.
Yeah, put the lid on it so that nobody could pry into what they were doing, and it's questionable, the whole Bush family, because, you have Prescott Bush, their grandfather, who was called out on trading with the Enemies Act and, worked to help support the Nazis. And, so, it's like right in your face kind of...
It is the most incredible family relationship with the American administration, isn't it? Just unbelievable that, a character like Prescott Bush could produce two presidents.
Hidden in plain sight, they say.
Unbelievable. Okay, so, right. So we don't quite know when this technology was introduced on this planet. We do have a bit of an idea as to what kind of a technology it is, and we know that we've got this subsequent cover-up going on. We know that there's more people that are at least open to information these days, since the with the internet. Where do you see the disclosure movement going now? Do you think that we are going to have some kind of an event, which some people talk about, is coming? It's like it's going to be the second coming of Christ or what have you, except it's alien disclosure. And when it happens, it's going to turn the whole world on its head. And then, of course, there are people that say, don't be ridiculous. It's never going to happen because there'll be absolute chaos, abject, What are your theories?
Well, Ollie, I don't have any particular inside, information on that particularly, but I'm rather encouraged. It seems like there's a lot of heated debate going on right now, especially with these secret space program whistleblowers coming forward that are revealing that an extraterrestrial reptilian predatory type of race was entered into an agreement with the Nazis. Now you have people on one side, like I know Dr. Greer back in November of 2016 did a conference saying that, because on Gaia television.
Hold on. Dan, you're saying there's some kind of evidence that suggests that Hitler was negotiating with some kind of alien species. Yeah, that's what you're saying.
According to William Tompkins and these other secret space program whistleblowers,
right?
That the information that they were getting from these embedded U.S. Navy spies within the Nazi space program that was hidden away, some of it was even iconographs. It was a reptilian group that had entered into an agreement with the SS and in working in an alliance with them, according to these whistleblowers. Now, what's happening is Dr. Greer came out, like I was saying, and said that there was Dr. Stephen Greer, who's the one who initiated the disclosure project through this meeting with the CIA director.
Right.
And also in 1997, he met with, along with Edgar Mitchell, the head of the Joint Chiefs of Intelligence. That's pretty high level up. That Admiral Wilson, he gave him a list of projects that are these unacknowledged special access projects we were talking about. And he found out that, yes, they do exist, and then he wanted to be read into them, be educated what they're about. They told him, "Sir, you do not have a need to know." And he said, "Well, the hell I do. I'm the head of intelligence of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, And so he gave the green light, basically, to Dr. Greer. He says, "These operations are illegal. You have my permission to go to the public with this information." And so, it was in 2001, we did go to the public with this information. But, we had like 500,000 people signed up on the National Press Club online to view this. But the first hour was jammed by our sources by the NSA, though people couldn't see it. But still, there's links where people can view it. But as far as, getting mainstream media coverage, they didn't want what we were saying, to get out there to the public.
No.
Anyway.
Apparently not. Evidently not. We only got Morecambe Mindy.
Yeah, anyway, I didn't mean to go off on a tangent again. Back to our original question. What was our original question?
I've got no. I thought you answered it very well. Okay, so thanks to William Tompkins, really brought us this information. So that lends some credibility. I'm going around the houses here a little bit, but when people hear about reptiles, I think they probably think about David Icke, and then they probably, he's been ridiculed to death.
Right.
It seems to me that of all the things that he's said, everything actually has been proven true, apart from the reptiles thing is, if you like, and that for a lot of people is a stretch too far. But really, what William Tompkins is suggesting is that David Icke is spot on, or vice versa.
Some indications he may be onto something. I don't know if everything he's saying is completely accurate, but I remember where we were going, and let me continue the thought.
Okay.
What is Dr. Greer was saying that there's been technologies developed in the 50s that could implant false memories into people's minds, and that you have 3 whistleblowers that are saying a secret space program exists in which the Navy was involved in. You have Michael Ralph, you have Randy Kramer, and you have Corey Good, who's gotten quite a bit of publicity lately. And then and they all three of these have done. Talk about controversial. They basically were a MILAB, which was a military abduction at age around 5 or 6. They were prepped for their 20-year enlistment, which about age 17. This does keep its own best secrecy. Around age 17, they were taken to the Lunar Operations Command on the moon. Our moon is artificial, and it's actually an alien spaceship. And that they did 20 years of service.
Yeah.
And then at the end of 20 years, their age regressed and go back into time to when they were like 17 years old or so. And then they living their life on a regular timeline. This is a whole concept of what time is and timelines. And then they starting to have recall, like total recall, like Arnold Schwarzenegger, of their service memories. But William Tompkins is not one of those people. William Tompkins has a documented background of being a child prodigy that had a photographic memory and created, these little battle. He made like a whole fleet of 51 ships, aircraft carriers, everything. And Office of Naval Intelligence was concerned because his dad would take him on board the ships and look at things. And he had a photographic memory and could recreate it to exact detail. And the Office of Naval Intelligence saw his ships being sold in a department store in Hollywood. And they said, "Oh God, we got to get this guy. We've got to get this guy into the Office of Naval Intelligence." And so that's how he got involved. And he even worked with NASA.
This is Tompkins. Tompkins.
Yeah. He was an aerospace engineer working with Douglas Aircraft, in which Dr. Robert Wood, who's a document authentication expert, worked there as well and verified his employment there. He has tons of documents, admirals supporting him. Very, very highly credible. Unlike the MILAB 3 guys that did the 20 and back, he's in his mid-90s now. And still a very clear mind, and he's detailing out a history that's absolutely incredible. But what Dr. Greer is saying is that these people who are saying that Dr. Greer believes that all the ET races are benevolent and that there is no non-benevolent ET races. This is the same thing the Vatican is promoting. They promoted that, I think, in 2008, that our space brothers are all, they're more highly evolved. I believe... And I believe
didn't the Pope say you can baptize aliens now or something, or they can be Christian or something, or they won't necessarily go to hell? He did say something.
Right. Yeah, you gotta fit it in. But the important point is that this has created. Greer is saying that my own personal belief is I believe the vast majority of them are benevolent, but I don't know about all of them. There could be some that are predatory, there's I know one of the witnesses who's a close friend who was in Vietnam as well, Sergeant Clifford Stone, was on retrieval cases where he saw a book. Well, he didn't saw a book. He worked with a book. He actually met face to face with extraterrestrials, and he had a operations manual that listed 57 different species by the time he got out of the service in 1989 that, they have different compositions. Some are silicone based, some are carbon based. You have different ways to patch them up because it's rare that, one of the discs crash. But he was part of a retrieval team that would go in, and see if there's bodies and living and dead extraterrestrials that he interacted with.
Who was this guy?
Clifford Stone, one of the witnesses that
right.
One of the 21 witnesses that went in front of the cameras.
And he reckons he saw alien bodies, and cadavers.
Oh yeah, and not only that, but interacted with. He was a kind of a empath, telepathic, and he interacted face to face with them. They brought him in. They would, as with an interpreter, he would share what they were conveying telepathically. Anyway, it goes into a long story on that one. But anyway, what this all boils down to is like you have different groups of people. One saying, "Oh, anybody who says there's bad ETs is, full of it, basically." And then you have this other group of the secret space programmer people who are saying that, yes, a reptilian race is working with the Nazis and that they are not necessarily your most benevolent group. And then there's this Nordic group, which
Nordic.
Yeah, in other words, they
Nordic.
look kind of like Scandinavian type of people, good-looking male, female people that are working with the U.S. Navy to kind of balance the tables, so to speak, between the military-industrial complex that's working with the Air Force and this Nazi reptilian group that entered into agreement in 1955, and the Navy, like back in 1942, when two of those discs got taken. One got taken to Wright-Patterson for the Army. The other one got taken to China Lake with the Navy. And what happened was...
Sorry, what got taken?
The disc, the shot down extraterrestrial disc to reverse engineer. And there was a group called Project RAN that was in Santa Monica that was researching and studying all this. Well, the Air Force happened to, through General Hap, what's his name? Anyway, the Air Force was able to get a huge amount of money in, and the Air Force believed, well, these are things flying in the sky, so therefore the Air Force has jurisdiction over this. The Navy's just out there, in the water, floating around, and so they felt like they kind of pushed the Navy out of the whole thing. The Navy kind of did its own program and kept secret for a long time, while the Air Force changed Project RAND into RAND Corporation, which is still operation today, a think tank on all this stuff. And so there was kind of a split between the U.S. Navy and the Air Force, both doing their own secret programs. According to Tompkins, that they're building these huge, you're talking kilometers long spacecraft that are built up in the mountains of Utah, in the Wasatch Mountains, in a modular type of format. And they have like these 8 battle groups that are these huge cigar-shaped kind of vehicles that are out there in our solar system.
Churchill cigars.
Called Solar Warden.
Huh. I've heard of this. And some people say, actually, that a lot of the supposed UFOs that we see in the sky are actually ours. They're actually our craft, and we've just got a lot more technology than we're letting on, or our military.
Well, remember the Belgian wave where they had the triangular shape, and then thousands, I think like 12,000 people saw this, and it was like 2,000 in some reports, official reports. And what that was the TR-3B, which flies out of Area 51 that the Air Force has, and it's an anti-gravity craft that they developed.
It's a giant Toblerone bar. It's mad. Okay, Dan, Twilight Zone or X-Files?
Say again, Ollie?
Twilight Zone or X-Files?
I'm not quite catching the question. I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah, okay. Which is your preferred theme music for the Twilight Zone or for the X-Files?
Oh, I got you. Actually, it's kind of funny.
I'm going to get you to hum it. You've got to hum it. No, I'm joking. Okay, I'm joking. I want to.
It's kind of funny that the X-Files did a whole disclosure. You noticed that on the. Did you see that where they were talking about the whole thing with the Nazis and the infiltrating and they did a whole disclosure right out there. And what it does is it's a psychological operation to normalize it, right? So when somebody says,
that's the word, to normalize it. This is what I was getting at. That Hollywood does this all the time. Sorry, carry on.
So when somebody brings it up, they say, "Oh yeah, I saw that on X-Files." It was a that's science fiction.
Yeah, then you can mock it. If it's been in a supposed fiction, and it could be a fiction or it might not. But how do we know? There was I don't. But yeah, it does make it easy then for folks to, basically just ridicule these kind of stories, and the media is very, very clever at that. The media is very clever at that.
Oh, billions of dollars are going into people who totally understand sociology, psychology, understand how to, as Edward Bernays said, the engineering of consent, to
manufacturing consent.
Yeah, to form the form perceptions of the public in order to keep what is actually going on secret.
Tell me, you mentioned the moon. So that's a fascinating one. Now you basically mentioned it as a great big spacecraft a second ago. We hear about the dark side of the moon. And we've heard about things that were said by, you mentioned Buzz Aldrin earlier. Didn't he mention that they saw they were followed to the moon, he said. And is there not are there not reports that the reason that we've not been back since the Apollo missions is because we were warned away from hanging out on the moon? What's your take on all that?
Well, one of my favorite topics here, is like they, I'm a ham radio operator. That's how I got in. I could copy high-speed code, and that's when the Navy took me in and made me a code. I was training people in code, but the ham radio operators were, they say we never went to the moon, we were in low orbit. No, we were in the moon, because you have all these ham radio operators that had their dish antennas, which are highly directional. They had to be pointing and updating the position of the moon constantly. So the signal was coming from the moon, but NASA had a time delay, and so they blamed the overheated camera why it was. Why the transmission was shut off for a little bit. Ham radio operators were picking up that, Neil Armstrong was saying, oh my God.
That was during the moon landing. Yeah. Really? These babies are huge?
Yeah, they were lined up along the crater. What William Tompkins, who had an excellent photographic memory, when he was working at TRW, who was working with Houston, and they had a live video feed. So he witnessed, and, they have witnesses that they saw. And in fact, he drew a sketch, which he's very good at drawing sketches, of showing what these, apparently, according to Tompkins, they were part of the reptilian Draco Federation ships that were telling them that they heard a message saying that, you can do like 6 more missions, pick up a few rocks, and then don't come back, basically. They were basically warned, like, no trespassing, do not come back to the moon. And this was, really? Substantiated through a number of different sources. Beside the ham radio operators picking up the transmission as well. That's why we never went back to the moon, because we were warned off, because they have bases on the other side of the moon. It's Carl Wolf, Dr. Carl Wolf, who joined one of the 21 witnesses that joined me in Washington. He saw, when he was working at the NSA facility where they were doing the lunar orbiter, where they were mapping the dark side of the moon, he was working with the photographic equipment that they had some trouble with, and the guy kind of breached security and said, oh, by the way, we discovered a base on the other side of the moon. And he showed very clear pictures of these domes, huge towers, mushroom-shaped buildings, all over the dark side of the moon, with the side that faces. It's not really dark. It's just the side that, obscured, that we always see one side of the moon all the time. The other side you don't see, right?
That's right.
So, he also said he was willing to testify under oath before Congress. But, there's an entire alien civilization up there.
Where did he get that intel?
He got that intel because he was there and visually saw it as he was working on the photographic equipment that was getting the live video feed that was coming from the lunar orbiter that was making a mosaic of the whole moon surface.
Right.
This is 1967, 68, before we went to the moon.
Before we went to the moon. When
And
we
Donna,
were taking lots of flybys.
Donna Hare, who worked at NASA for 20 years, she went into a compartment that, and she says, I don't know how they do it. I've worked here for 20 years. Some people don't have a clue. Other people know what's going on behind the scenes, and that what they do is they airbrush the UFOs out and the pictures, and you can, and people can notice there's some really sloppy Photoshop jobs, they do on these things. It's kind of conspicuous. But they airbrush these out before they release them to the public. And she also said she's willing to testify under oath, to her experience that she experienced there at NASA. So, yeah, NASA, it gets this never a straight answer for a good reason.
What other evidence is there, though? There is a big old moon base, the other side there. How much evidence really is there?
Well, it's kind of curious, too, that NASA, one of the most significant historic events of humankind, that we went to the moon, NASA has lost the videotapes of the NASA transmission,
Really?
Yeah. And a lot of people point out a lot of discrepancies in the video itself, many
Shadows,
discrepancies,
like
lights coming in from different angles. The jets should have blown out. There should be no dust, underneath all these discrepancies is because they used the
camera
production studio.
Corner at the back. Yeah. Oh, sorry.
And they had to drop in a video feed because they couldn't show the public. When Neil Armstrong was there, he panned his camera around, and you could see these huge, enormous alien craft that were sitting on the rim of the crater where the lunar module had landed. So, yeah, we've been warned off the moon. That's why we haven't come back, and they're sworn to secrecy. They're 33rd degree Freemasons.
The Native Americans in one of those old westerns, kind of on the brow of the hill, as soon as the cowboy rides down into the valley. Anyway, sorry, carry on. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's what happened with the moon.
Wow.
And this was right at the time I was receiving my report. It was kind of coincidental. I was going into the blockhouse, the highly secured facility. I had a color badge, that magnetic strip that let me into a lot of compartments because I had a fairly high level of security clearance. I remember seeing the astronauts bouncing around on the black and white TV in the officers' quarter. And then when I went in there, and then I got this report, of extraterrestrial. I mean, in 1969, I couldn't imagine anything that we would have that could be 70 feet in diameter, a disk that could fly at 7,000 miles per hour. Only thing that it could equate is, being extraterrestrial. So, it's just kind of interesting.
And pretty portable. If they can just, hang out, sit on a ledge in the middle of the moon. I mean, we had to kind of plan being able to land in a hole on the moon, didn't we? And even then it was touch and go. Whereas these guys just see us landing and, you know what, let's just have some popcorn. It's pretty brazen. If that's true, it's taking the Michael a bit, no? Like you're a bit crap.
Well, you have to wonder, if they're friendly, why would they warn us off? And you have
that's right.
People
involved and if they're so highly advanced, and if they weren't friendly, presumably they could have done a Christopher Columbus. They could have just taken us out.
Well, there's a lot of heated debate going on right now. I mean, I did a post on my Facebook page, which is facebook.com/disclosure witness, and about my own. I like to separate myself from this and and not say that I know anything, which is true. I don't really know anything. I'm researching what I do know. And boy, you get some heated debates. Some people really come back and say, "Oh, you're, they're all good aliens. This is like totally poppycock, about any reptilians and stuff like that." And so, I don't know.
I totally agree.
I haven't met one.
I totally agree. By the way, what you said earlier. Who was it? Bertrand Russell, wasn't it, who said the world is full of people that they think they know everything, and not enough people honest enough to say, I really don't know. but that's not to say, as you say, you got to research for yourself. And the one thing I haven't researched in the way that you have, of course. Well, the one thing I can absolutely 100% applaud of what you've said and say I'm certain and that's true is that we have such an enormous cover-up about so much stuff from the media. It's just like, reading the news on a daily basis is such a lot of nonsense compared to what really is important to the average guy on the street and what they talk about. And therefore, just from that alone, you've got to question some of the stuff going on. And then, of course, there have been some pretty significant events like the assassination of JFK and 9/11. Which have led us to, all sorts of new things as well. But
that's why I don't watch the news. I monitor the news and see what it is that the perception that they want me to see. They kind of get a heads up on what the cabal, I guess you could call them, where they're trying to steer this. Like in the news over here, they continually, Russia interfered with our election and destroyed the Clinton presidency, and that WikiLeaks is behind it, and with Russia, and you can see how they're attempting to fabricate, what the perception is that, and then you have, paid protesters, coming out, and you have these people in these black outfits with masks and stuff like that, setting cars on fire and breaking windows and things to
and
make.
You just wonder who Soros is paying today, sort of thing.
Right, exactly. So there's all this perception management going on, but it can hurt your head, because you can see that guy who's speaking to you, who's looks so trustworthy, and just saying it so calmly. And it's just like perfectly orchestrated to engineer your consent to give approval to what it is they want you to believe.
Yeah, no, it is.
But we have an effect. I mean, going into the metaphysical aspect of it all, each one of us is connected to a collective consciousness that when we don't give our consent to things, when we start to realize the deceptions that are going on, we start to connect the dots together, and you start to see patterns that are going on, and you start to see that they're attempting to engineer your consent. When you don't give your consent, it affects the collective consciousness that we're all connected to. And there's much science.
That's quite an esoteric side to of all the things you've talked about tonight. That side of it's actually quite a spiritual thing that you're talking about there. No?
Well, it's science is showing that everything is interconnected. That's why.
What do you mean? Okay, so give consent to who? To an entity or to?
Well, when we started blowing up nuclear bombs back in 1945, we started having a wave of UFO sightings. That's why Captain Robert Salas, one of the witnesses, they came over with a UFO, and UFO has an old stigma to it, an extraterrestrial craft, and shot a beam down and just turned off his 10 nuclear-tipped ICBM missiles that he was 60 feet under the ground in a control module monitoring and controlling.
There's been a lot of talk about this kind of stuff more recently, hence the underground explosions, no?
Yes. Because
carry on.
Our science is very at an infantile state of understanding yet. We don't understand the interconnection of multiple dimensions.
No.
And
that sounds complex already.
Yeah. It gets into, I did some work with Dr. Marcel Vogel, who was IBM's top scientist. Anyway, it gets into a whole nother show in itself. But the latest discoveries, in quantum physics and are indicating this reality, which we're just on the threshold of starting to understand.
Yeah, so I've heard. Are they not putting the, I don't know about finishing, but largely sort of finishing touches on a quantum computer that can somehow compute interdimensional parallels.
And the subconscious minds of millions of people affects reality. That's why
I don't know what any of that means, by the way. But sorry, carry on.
On television, you see so much violence. Every channel you go, somebody's stabbing or shooting somebody, and you have all these apocalyptic films of the end of the world, and then you have
what is that program?
The video games of killing everybody and everything, and you got all this imagery of humans. I call it the human kill programming. That Hollywood seems to be obsessed with, in just about every in all the crime dramas, the different ways they dish out. The crime dramas are like a perfect avenue in order to dish out all this imagery of people torturing and killing each other and doing horrific things to each other. All this imagery, works with fear and terror, which they discovered a long time ago in a psychological operation, disempowers people.
Blimey. It is.
But that goes into a whole conversation that's a little more involved and in-depth than what we're covering right now, Olly. But I just thought I'd throw that in there just for a
no, I appreciate that. I'm aware. Actually, I'd love to get you back on, and I'd try and pull my sidekick or my sometime sidekick Piers Garnham into that, because he knows a bit about that. He follows a lot of what David Wilcock talks about. And I think maybe there's a little bit of a Venn diagram there with the kind of stuff you're talking about. But, oh, man, I tell you, it is.
I started thinking more along those lines. After I went to Washington to testify, I've been I've sent thousands of faxes through an online fax that allow people to communicate to the representatives. I traveled around the United States in major cities and did presentations with Dr. Greer, and I had standing ovations, but everywhere we went, they made fun of it in the local media affiliates. Like the Disclosure Project is looking at aliens to solve the world's energy problems. They'll make it and spin it, use called the giggle factor, and so I was kind of in a despair. I thought it was part of a world-changing event, but since they control the mainstream media and people's perceptions, how can you? You could protest till you're blue in the face. You can contact your representatives, but I thought,
they are
maybe
losing control though now of the media with the internet, which is really taking over the media, the traditional media, because
thanks to shows like yours, Olly.
Thank you, and yours. No, damn right. It is. Jay Rockefeller stood up there in the Senate and said we should never have invented the internet. We should never let the cat out of the bag. And
right. And his buddy Brzezinski said, back in 2012, that because of the alternative media of the internet, there's this global awakening, which they don't want to have happening. And there is a global awakening because of the alternative media of the internet. Thank you, Revolution Radio. You're absolutely correct. And I think more and more you can see it, that people who you wouldn't even think be aware of this stuff are starting to talk about it. There is a global awakening happening, and it is happening through the alternative media of the internet. And I think as more people become aware, I think just like the birds and the bees and the animals and, everything has like sort of a collective mind, I believe the human race has, and there's many indications that shows that's true, has a collective mind, and where as more people become aware, it becomes more exponential and more people become aware.
You're just trying to give us that feel-good feeling, aren't you, coming up to the top of the show? Right? It's, I don't mean to sound cynical. Dan, I'll tell you what.
Well,
I think
hopefully, Olly, hopefully.
Go on. Well, yeah, damn right. Absolutely.
I mean, it's
Dan
only
Willis,
the future of the human race at stake, so.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. We didn't even discuss things like EMPs and North Korea. There's so many. I'll tell you what, though. I don't know whether I'm positive or not, but I do feel at least that in this particular time, I'm learning a few things. What do you reckon, Dan?
I'm sorry, one more time, Olly?
Can we ask for any more than just to learn, Really? It's very selfish. Sorry, I was expecting the top of the show there. Apparently, we've got another 30 seconds. Yeah, no, I mean, seriously, at least if you want to look into these things, you're going to find some stuff out. Some of it, as you said, and as I've said, you can't be sure what is and isn't true. But on the other hand, you're going to grow within yourself by opening your mind to some of this stuff, and some of it is for real. So at least we're expanding our consciousness, no?
Well, in my notes at the webmatrix.net might help some people, on piecing together things. But, don't take anything I'm saying, compare it with your own research. And, because just imagine, Olly, if we release these technologies, we'd be EMP proof. Everybody could have their home and business running off. We can get rid of all these grid wires all over the place that if we get an ejection.
God bless you, mate. Oh, we're off. That's it. Jingly Jangly, thank you so much. Dan Willis. Webmatrix.net.
We're out of time already. Oh, my God.
Yeah, that's
good. Good talking with you, Olly. I enjoyed it.
We'll do this again. Thank you so much, and God bless you. Well done.
Bless you too. All right, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to Revolution Radio.